What addiction is the hardest to quit?
As a former active H addict, I will say I would not wish withdrawals on anyone. They are truly hellacious.
I feel blessed to have gotten out of all that before fentanyl took over.
I would be dead now probably.
I don't know you, but I'm so proud of you. I can't think of a more Reddit way to congratulate someone. LMAO. I showed up at rehab on the same day as another guy. He was detoxing from H and I was detoxing from alcohol. The rest of the people had a bet on who had it worst. I have to say detoxing from alcohol is pretty goddamn awful.
The shakes, the anxiety, the hallucinations, the seizures, not sleeping, not eating, throwing up, anything that comes in contact with your insides including water.
Terror. Round-the-clock terror. It took me 5 days before I could eat or sleep. They sent me to the emergency RO. Twice for bags of saline. I don't know that you need to compare these devastating drugs. It's all bad. I've gone through benzo WD,
Roxy 30, Suboxone WD cold turkey after a 2 years habit. So I was very familiar with opiate WD, but Fent WD shook me.
I'd never experienced the shakes and burning and literally having to clench my cheeks the whole walk and train ride home. It was awful.
Oh, and the best part is that it was precipitated WD brought on by Suboxone.
I ended up in the hospital. I've been there with precipitated WD. Hell. On earth.
The moment I realized what was going on. Well, I've never felt regret like that before in my life. And there is a lot of things worth regretting in this life.
Understandable you ended up in the hospital. Hope you're doing well. Clenched fist. I'm proud of you.
Heroin, worst shit ever, was addicted to it for 7 years heavy. You need it to wake up, eat, piss, shit, sleep. You have to have it to do anything. And getting off is like nothing you can even imagine or compare it to. It literally made me suicidal coming off it. Really. Like I would have blown my brains out if there was a gun in my reach. I had to get on the methadone program, and you gotta take that every single day. Sucks.
But I'm off dope and off the methadone, clean 6 months, and will never in my life touch that shit ever in my life again. It's pure devil's blood. Good work, man. Shit is hard as hell, but you did it. Good fucking work, FR. Glad you are clean. Glad you are still here, Purple Heart. My husband died from an overdose 3 years ago. He fought so hard. He was on methadone for 12 years. He used to call it liquid handcuffs.
I'm very sorry to hear that your husband was lost to it. I really am. I've lost some friends I had since 6th grade to it. I also almost lost my life to once. If it weren't for the quick thinking and reaction from the guy's apartment I was in, who had just met me 5 minutes before I collapsed on his bathroom floor, I wouldn't be here. That young man pulled me outside on the sidewalk and did CPR and mouth-to-mouth recitation the entire time waiting for paramedics to arrive. They arrived, gave me ungodly amounts of Narcan CPR, and I was unresponsive. My stepdad heard it over the scanner when they stopped all resuscitation efforts, called it in DOA, and were going to get the bag they zip you up in. They got to the ambulance, and out of nowhere I just popped up, the sheriff standing next to me. When I jumped up, literally jumped about 3 feet off the ground and ran about 20 feet, screamed WTF. I laid in ICU for days. I was lucky, and as you know, not everyone is. It's terrible how many great people have been lost to that shit. I've knew and met some of the best people that their only problem was addiction to dope. People just don't know how powerful it is. It does not discriminate. You can be filthy rich, superstar, or blue collar, homeless. All it takes is one time. It sinks the hooks and deep grabs you, and there's no such thing as a lifelong dope addict. You either get off it or OT takes your life, period. I still to this day don't remember what that young man looks like or his name, and never got to say thank you for what he did that night. I'm 100% positive that had it not been for him, I wouldn't be here today. Complete stranger knew just my name for 5 minutes, much younger than me, knew exactly what to do and wasted no time. How he knew and didn't panic or just say he's done and just leave me there and wait for paramedics to deal with me is beyond incredible. I don't know if I would have known what to do in that spot. I would have panicked because I don't know how to do CPR. How'd he was in his upper 20s. I'd hug that dude if I ever got a chance to meet him again. I wish he was everywhere that someone was who fell out because we'd all still be here. Not just some of us.
Confused face or I'd like to go back in time, beat the brakes off whoever figured out how to create dope. Guy's a piece of shit. I would I'd ace his ass. I really got angry just now thinking about who discovered it. My apologies. On another note, something really freaks me out about how thin the line between life and death could be. You're having a conversation with us on Reddit right now, but look how close you were to being zipped up in a body bag. I now think of how many people would have probably survived if the medical professionals gave juiced a bit more effort or waited a wee time longer. Not blaming them, mind you, I'm just thinking of how close these things could be. Greater than I still to this day don't remember what that young man looks like or his name and never got to say thank you for what he did that night. I'm 100% positive that had it not been for him I wouldn't be here today. Complete stranger knew just my name for 5 minutes, much younger than me, knew exactly what to do and wasted no time. How he knew and didn't panic or just say he's done and just leave me there and wait for paramedics to deal with me is beyond incredible. I don't know if I would have known what to do in that spot. I would have panicked because I don't know how to do CPR. Howdy? He was in his upper 20s. I'd hug that dude if I ever got a chance to meet him again. I wish he was everywhere that someone was who fell out because we'd all still be here. Not just some of us. Confused face. I know Reddit is a vehement hatred for things like this, but regardless of if you're spiritual or not, this is the closest thing to an angel. A person who was in your life for a mere moment, probably among the most important people in terms of his function, and you'll likely never see him again. I could not have said it better myself. I'm an atheist, but my closest friends are Christian. This is honestly an act of God, in whatever form they may take for you. My wife died of an OD 2 years ago. We met in relapsed together. We're trying to get clean again. I had my last Sublocade injection in December. Quit smoking weed a month ago. I'm going for my pilot's license now. I still can't fathom ever being in love again, but somehow I feel a glimmer of hope. I'm so lonely and I still cry about her most days. This is my first post after lurking for many years. I'm sorry to hear that I keep this post from someone on Reddit from 8 years ago saved on my phone. It describes grief in a good way and hopefully gives you a bit of hope for the future. Grief comes in waves. Alright, here goes. I'm old. What that means is that I've survived, so far, and a lot of people I've known and loved did not. I've lost friends, best friends, acquaintances, coworkers, grandparents, mom, relatives, teachers, mentors, students, neighbors, and a host of other folks. I have children, and I can't imagine the pain it must be to lose a child. But here's my 2 cents. I wish I could say you get used to people dying. I never did. I don't want to. It tears a hole through me whenever somebody I love dies, no matter the circumstances. But I don't want it to not matter. I don't want it to be something that just passes. My scars are a testament to the love and the relationship that I had for and with that person. And if the scar is deep, so is the love. So be it. Scars are a testament to life. Scars are a testament that I can love deeply and live deeply and be cut, or even gouged, and that I can heal and continue to live and continue to love. And the scar tissue is stronger than the original flesh ever was. Scars are a testament to life. Scars are only ugly to people who can't see. As for grief, you'll find it comes in waves. When the ship is first wrecked, you're drowning, with wreckage all around you. Everything floating around you reminds you of the beauty and the magnificence of the ship that was, and is no more. And all you can do is float. You find some piece of the wreckage and you hang on for a while. Maybe it's some physical thing. Maybe it's a happy memory or a photograph. Maybe it's a person who is also floating. For a while, all you can do is float. Stay alive. In the beginning, the waves are 100 feet tall and crash over you without mercy. They come 10 seconds apart and don't even give you time to catch your breath. All you can do is hang on and float.
After a while, maybe weeks, maybe months, you'll find the waves are still 100 feet tall, but they come further apart.
When they come, they still crash all over you and wipe you out.
But in between, you can breathe, you can function. You never know what's going to trigger the grief.
It might be a song, a picture, a street intersection, the smell of a cup of coffee. It can be just about anything. Dit and the wave comes crashing. But in between waves, there's life. Somewhere down T line, and it's different for everybody.
You find that the waves are only 80 feet tall.
Or 50 feet tall. And while they still come, they come further apart. You can see them coming.
An anniversary, a birthday, or Christmas, or landing at O'Hare.
You can see it coming, for the most part, and prepare yourself. And when it washes over you, you know that somehow you will, again, come out the other side. Soaking wet, sputtering, still hanging on to some tiny piece of the wreckage, but you'll come out. Take it from an old guy. The waves never stop coming, and somehow you don't really want them to. But you learn that you'll survive them. And other waves will come. And you'll survive them too. If you're lucky, you'll have lots of scars from lots of loves. And lots of shipwrecks.
Pilot's license? Impressive stuff and good luck. Sorry for your loss.
My fiancé died of an OD on May 29, 2019. Leaving me a single father to our daughter. She was scheduled for rehab 2 days later. I was also 3 months into a battle with stage 4 cancer. I had a 5% chance of living. I am now cancer-free for 3 years now. I still think of her every day. It doesn't get easier, you just learn to live with it. I miss her every day. It's going on 5 years now and it feels like yesterday. Also my first post about it. You are a determined individual, and I know you're going to kick ass and ace that pilot license. I am so sorry for your loss. You are not alone. I lost my partner on March 3rd.
He had a year clean, and on his birthday, I left to walk the dog before we were going to go out to dinner to celebrate his B-day. I came home to a locked bathroom door, no response on the other side. He had been clean, so I was very confused but called 911 right away, and desperately tried getting the door open while waiting for paramedics.
And as soon as they kicked the door in, I saw the look on their faces and that they were even doing life-saving measures. My whole fell apart in an instant. He had just relapsed that day apparently. I had no idea.
His funeral is next week, and it's so painful feeling so much love, but so much love that I won't be able to give him in this world anymore.
Blew it crying heartbreak.
Hoping the best for you.
Sorry for your loss, pleading face red heart. Good for you, man.
My experience doesn't seem to compare to yours, but I was addicted for about 3 years. Painkillers first, then heroin. There were some definite low moments, like selling all my stuff and shitting myself in a McDonald's parking lot waiting for my dealer.
Overall, heroin addiction gets a 4/10 from me. Methadone ultimately worked for me. Been clean for, going on 9 years.
What was hardest thing to kick for you?
If you don't mind me asking.
That's a tough one.
It was probably heroin, but it was more the physical symptoms that you mentioned that made it so difficult. You know how it goes. I didn't continue using because I needed to get high. I continued using because I needed to not be sick. I don't want to say that methadone made getting clean easy, but it was certainly much easier than trying to kick cold turkey.
Methadone didn't make it easy for me to quit. It made it easy for me to get my life back to a stable, mostly normal state.
A state where I could function, go to work, plan my days, see my family and friends, etc.
With time, that normalcy allowed me to build the motivation and the drive to decrease my dose and ultimately get clean.
I'm a big advocate for methadone clinics that have good counseling.
The couple counselors and nurses that helped me for 3.5 years were amazing.
That was my experience as well.
But that normalcy and not being sick is huge. Being able to function and not being sick every day is more than half the battle, at least in my opinion and in my experience.
I think my addiction would have persisted for a lot longer if I had to do it cold turkey.
This ended up being crazy long, but goes through some of my addiction and recovery for anyone interested.
I was also a heavy heroin addict for about 7 years, but I did every drug I could get my hands on and get in my veins. I shot meth, coke, crack. Need to use vinegar or lemon juice here, which wrecked my veins.
6 years of heroin never hurt them at all. Pretty much anything water-soluble, even stuff like Ambien.
Also smoked cigarettes, but quit that in the preamble to my heroin addiction. Heroin
is the hardest for me to quit long-term. Coke, crack is the hardest to stop doing on any given day.
The cravings to do more are out of this world.
Heroin, you can do a fat shot and be totally good for the night. Totally can do more, but coke, you do a fat shot and want more 20 minutes later.
Cravings get super intense.
Meth, for me, while it had an insane rush, was not something I liked very much because of the difficulty sleeping even after one shot.
I do want get a crazy good rush and high for like
6-8 hours, but then don't sleep for like 36 more hours even if I did an insane amount of heroin.
I eventually found that benzos like Xanax actually did help, but I didn't have them very often. What got me in the end to get it together and quit was a combination of a few things. I actually never tried coke or crack until my last year and only ever shot it up with heroin. Speedballs were insanely good. Fent was becoming more available at that time as well, so sometimes I'd intentionally get heroin, NT and coke, crack, and do that mixed together.
Super dangerous, but the rushes all hit back to back to back, which made for a crazy high.
I knew I was going to die soon doing this stuff, and my mom pleaded with me to try rehab again, so I said yes. In rehab, got a doctor to approve me staying on Suboxone the entire time, which was actually not allowed, but he broke the rules and did it after I told him my experience and why it was so hard in rehab when my heavy usage made withdrawal horrible the entire time. Hard to work on myself in that state. So for the first time I felt good during rehab. I was finally able to work on myself and think about why I was doing this. Ultimately, I just thought I had ruined my entire life by dropping out of college, losing a longtime girlfriend because I was a fuck-up. I worked a bunch of dead-end low-paying jobs that didn't support me, and I just thought I was ruined. Suboxone saved my life along with that doctor, getting on that and then getting a job in a rehouse that actually paid well enough to live did as well. Suddenly I was able to get an apartment and be stable.
Then I saw an opportunity at a different warehouse and went there for a pay cut, but with the possibility of fast, merit-based promotions.
Also, during the first 2 years I intentionally didn't do anything more than have a casual FWB. I didn't want a relationship. I then met my now wife, who I almost immediately fell in love with, who felt truly compatible with me in every way. I worked hard as hell and moved up quickly, and I went from a 1-bedroom apt with a futon mattress on the floor with a TV on a nightstand to now I own my house, 2 cars, 1 adopted and 2 bio kids, and my wife is mostly stay at home. For me, addiction was this trap of misery that felt impossible to get out of. I really thought I had ruined my life, but once I got it together it improved so much faster than I thought. I put all the hustle I did to feed a massive heroin addiction into work. Now my life is great, I can't even imagine going back. It just never felt like any of this was a possibility, and the extreme physical dependence of heroin and the ease of relieving those horrible symptoms made it so difficult. But there was always a stigma among some addicts, myself included, that Suboxone was just legal heroin, and if I did that I was cheating. That stupid mentality almost killed me. I watched Requiem for a Dream, and even now, thinking about it gives me nightmares. That movie is one of the most effective anti-drug forms of media out there. Great movie though. Watched it once, will never watch it again. Unless you are a self-destructive teenager who already dabbles in heroin and craves, romanticizes dysfunction because you are young, drowning in trauma and abuse, and suicidal. Me and my buddy watched it when I was probably 16 and him 20. As soon as it ended, we looked at each other with a shit-eating grin. No words needed,
We both jumped up and headed to the car to go to the city to cop dope.
It's been a long time since then, and that memory is so significant to me. Literally, every single
person I know who has seen that movie, or anyone I see speak on it, says it's the most powerful anti-drug media that exists. Yet it excited me and actually caused me to go out and cop when I was trying not to use as much as I currently was. That's so backwards and really speaks to how I was experiencing life at the time.
In hindsight, I see that I was still just a kid. I never had a chance. I turned 30 yesterday, and heroin addiction, or addiction in general, has been a factor that pretty much my entire life has revolved around, even when clean. I'm happy with my life.
Happy with my experiences. I've done some good stuff, been blessed, but goddamn am I so tired of being an addict.
Heroin addiction is no fucking joke. Though, today, I don't see addiction as the main issue.
Addiction is a symptom of a larger problem that masquerades as the actual issue.
Heroin addiction takes every piece of trauma you have, every bit of pain you have, and it wraps it up in a neat, simple, single package and delivers it back to you as heroin addiction but that's not the truth. I kick. My addiction issues are barely comparable, in a good way, to when I was 20 years old, but it's still a factor that my entire life revolves around. I'm rambling, sorry. Well, I will say. Without the relief provided by heroin, I'd have killed myself a very long time ago. In a very real sense, heroin saved my life. I'll always appreciate the role opiates have played in my life, but I'm so ready for anath. Clean period, was once totally clean for like 4 years. True bliss. Can't seem to get back. Alright, I'm done lol. Little verbal ventilation on a difficult day for me, I suppose.
This was my exact experience watching that movie.
I'm the same age as you and heroin is still a huge part of my life despite being over 2.5 years clean.
One of the only real anti-drug movies out there.
Most anti-drug movies start with the good stuff then move on to the downfall. There is no good stuff to Requiem for a Dream.
Hey, my ex was a heroin addict.
And I'm kinda getting slightly annoyed with people claiming cigs, coffee, whatever were worse. I suppose though it's different for all.
My ex had experience with meth, heroin, fentanyl, name an opiate and he's familiar. Adderall, weed, coffee, cigs. Although the latter shouldn't be even in the same category. He would say with no doubt, heroin and fentanyl were the absolute hardest to kick.
My ex had an injury, then you know the route. Doc gave him painkillers. Deep, but of course that snowballed into other shit like, remember when they made Perk 80s?
Me neither, but he does. Then that wasn't good enough. So heroin, then when he couldn't find H he used fentanyl. He did the methadone clinics and the Suboxone, relapsed got clean and relapsed and got clean the relapsed and got clean. It was the hardest thing to endure. Deep for both of us. No, I wasn't the addict, but I saw him go through it and he became a shell of himself.
Came home to spoons in the bed and
not being able to wake him up, cried with him beside the toilet, laid with him on the cold floor, gave him showers, made him soup, took him to doctors, and told myself it had to get better soon.
He lied, stole, acted nothing like the soul I fell in love with.
After many years, that and him relapsing over and over, he finally got clean, but I had already left years prior.
He's been clean for about 5 years now and I truly feel he will never use again. We dated for about 8 of the umpteen years. He was an addict. I had the harsh realization that I could never save him but only myself. I had to get out of that relationship.
Still, I have to say without a shadow of a doubt, he's one of the best humans I've met in regards to caring about others' well-beings.
I will always love him and he will always be my first real love.
The addiction took him under faster than I could even articulate, and once clean, I still had to love him from afar for the immense fear it would happen again.
He has and continues to show up for me for things such as hospital stays, family members dying. I don't know what I'm necessarily getting at here other than he wasn't his addiction, He was and is so much goddamn more.
Your addiction wasn't you. You were, and are so much goddamn more. Not sure if heroin is even accessible anymore, by the way, because fentanyl rules the streets now and is disgustingly cheap, but for people asking what it feels like, let that question come and go.
It's fine to be curious, but curiosity can lead you down some scary ally ways. Sure, I thought countless times about trying, but he actually was the preventative measure for me not to ever do so. He always told me when I asked what it felt like.
You know what an orgasm feels like. Imagine that enveloping your entire body and mind. It's like a warm blanket that takes you away from all your pain, only to leave you in unfathomable pain in your mind, body and soul.
The initial high you feel will never be felt again, and he did
say countless times he needed it to feel normal. Normalcy is not the same for everyone, and with different chemical compounds inevitably changing your mind over time. Normalcy he only felt by using. The movie he showed me, and I'll admit it won't leave you the same after watching it, was the movie Candy with Heath Ledger and Abbey Cornish.
It's separated into 3 segments. Heaven, the initial love for the drug. Earth, the brutal realization of what addiction means in all facets of your life.
Fae. And hell. How the addiction ruins many possibilities in your life in which will never be possible again.
Even after the addiction is gone. Damn.
Sorry, your words took me back, and please man, continue being clean. You are a fucking warrior each and every emphin' day you say, nah, fuck that shit.
Candy movie quote, there's no going back. If you're given a reprieve, I think it's good to remember just how thin it is. I hear ya, my brother.
Hilarious seeing people say, scrolling, or, chocolate. Give me a fucking break.
The answer is dope. Yeah, sure, people are addicted to inconsequential things. But heroin ruined my life, multiple times. Lost everything. Jobs, family, friends, material items. Had to start stealing, jail, rehabs, sober houses, etc. Lasted almost 10 years and was living on the street for a stint. I wanted to stop so bad, and to not feel like my body dying, you had to use.
I also thought once I went through detox, rehab, that I would be cured.
What a naive thought. It finally took me overdosing in a 7-Eleven bathroom on
heroin and meth that I was going to die and not be remembered by everyone I ever knew, and die in the gutter as a piece of shit addict.
Went to rehab the final time and things just clicked.
It wasn't easy at all, but I knew what I had to do and did it.
Meanwhile, people relapsing all around me, but I stayed strong.
Going on 5 years now with a great job, car, my own place, family back in my life. Agreed, I've been clean off H for 20 years as of 3/16.
I had been addicted from the age of 12 till 30 years of age. I was a functional addict, with periods of sobriety, although never truly clean, so to speak, till I was 30. It started with painkillers, but quickly by 8th grade progressed. Why I say mental illness is also an addiction is because most addicts say they are self-medicating. The fact is, it's 100% natural to want euphoria, to be happy. Stay strong on your path. Accept bad moods and work on your own happiness. I do give my issues to Jesus, but I do not believe in church. Cocaine was hard. Booze was harder. Cancer sticks were the hardest. Took me 2 solid years of trying to quit. I'd go 2 to 3 days, then have a whole pack. I finally waited until I got the flu really bad and haven't smoked on cigarette in 2,256 days. According to my app, that's 31,578 cigarettes not smoked and over $200 not spent. The last pack I purchased was over $17.50 here in California. Agreed. I quit alcohol, cocaine, crack, Adderall, weed, and cigarettes 6 years ago. The only thing I still crave is cigarettes. Can confirm I used to know someone who managed to quit heroin and cocaine after taking both at the same time, but he couldn't kick smoking for the life of him. As far as I know, he may be doing it to this day. The only reason why I quit cigarettes is because I got a lung infection that lasted 3 weeks.
Wasn't bad enough to go on antibiotic but hurt enough that I couldn't smoke.
By the time I felt better I figured, why go back?
The cravings already went away.
I quit a few years ago by switching to a shitty vape.
It wasn't the same and just pissed me off, so I wouldn't smoke it but told myself I wasn't going to buy a pack. So would hit it only every so often instead of all the time, and that helped slow my addiction and eventually stop it.
The first time I quit, my uncle had brought me cheap smokes from Thailand, and God, they were the worst thing I'd ever tasted. Thought I'd use this as a way to quit and it worked.
My mom's in the hospital right now for a blood infection and has been there for the last 16 days. She said the same thing. Might as well just quit, the hardest part is over at this point.
Same. I ended up on an IV drip and oxygen mask in hospital for a bad case of pneumonia a few months ago. Didn't have a smoke for 3 weeks before the hospital, so just didn't start again. Made it a lot easier.
It sounds like me. I've gone into debt buying cigarettes. May have to do bankruptcy or get a second on my house. Crank, OxyContin, benzoyl, at 16. Fentanyl, cocaine, LSD, you name it.
Took all for years, but can't quit smoking for longer than a month. All the others have been done with for 15 years, but even though I quit all these others cold turkey, I can't quit nicotine.
Cigarettes are fucking hard because they are sold at every convenience store.
Imagine if oxys were over the counter. No one would ever quit. I'm a smoker and I wish to God they would ban them outright.
I asked my 75-year-old grandmother who quit cigarettes over a decade ago if she still craves them.
She said she thinks about having a cigarette every day. I find this so weird cause after I got over the initial withdrawal from smoking, I couldn't even stand the smell anymore. To me, the smell of a freshly lit cigarette is wonderful. But the smell of cigarette smoke after it has settled into fabric or a room or just hung in the air for a while, is gross. It's been 23 years this coming November and I still crave a cigarette.
It's been over 30 for me and it's still the first thought in my head every morning when I wake up.
Luckily they're $26 per pack where I live, so I just keep focusing on the financial gain from quitting.
But I don't think there will ever come a time when I don't crave a cigarette.
Agreed. I'm only 4 months clear of cigs, but the price in UK has topped £20 for 30 grams of baccy. That plus the fact my awful cough has gone away means I can't go back no matter what the cravings are like. Interesting. I quit smoking cigarettes 4 years ago and have never felt the urge to smoke one ever again.
It's quite the opposite, actually.
The thought of smoking is so disgusting in my head that I get goosebumps. Big time for me too. Just a few days ago I found myself walking behind someone smoking and was very much enjoying the secondhand smoke.
I love me some secondhand smoke.
I've vaped for a few years but finally quit when I got glandular fever and physically couldn't.
By the time I recovered, I kind of just forgot that I was supposed to be addicted.
Know a guy who had the same thing happen after pneumonia. Congratulations. Absolutely huge.
Hope you're mega proud of yourself. A pack of cigarettes is 17.50 in CA?
A pack of smokes costs that much now. Holy shit. I was paying like 7.50 or something like that maybe a decade ago, I guess. I quit a long time ago. Bumming a smoke must piss people off now. I feel this. Cocaine was super hard.
Benzos were the most uncomfortable.
Booze was pretty hard, especially since I used to originally get off of blow. Now I'm 100% sober off everything. Struggling with the nicotine though. Quitting smoking was probably the hardest thing I ever did in my life.
And I tried many times before I finally succeeded, but I haven't had a cigarette in 25 years now, and I smoked for 25 years.
I am attempting to quit after smoking for 25 years. This was reassuring, good to hear. Bravo.
My dad just quit after almost 40 years. He's at 6 months free now.
You got this.
He used a drug called Zyban, unsure of spelling. The government provided for free, BC Canada, and he said it helped majorly.
If you can find it and want to try it.
If you really want to quit and don't mind reading a relatively short book, check out Alan Carr's Easy Way to Stop Smoking. This guy somehow retrains your brain while you read the book. Plus he encourages you to continue to smoke while you read it.
I smoked for 25 years and had tried everything to quit.
The gum, the patch, cold turkey, etc. Nothing worked.
Then one of my bar regulars hands me this book, and by the time I got to the end I didn't even want to smoke the final, pressed
ribbed cigarette because they were already tasting like shit and I just had no urge to smoke anymore. I haven't had a craving since, and as a matter of fact, I went out camping a couple of years ago with a buddy that still smokes and I smoked like a chimney all weekend to prove to him how easy it is to quit with this method.
Mr. Carr has written many books on other addictions and fears since quitting his job as an accountant. My wife read the one on alcohol and quit after multiple failed MPTS, rehab stints. But they all pretty much boil down to the same handful of main ideas. Case in point, I also quit drinking just from applying the principles I had learned from the smoking book. My wife and I still go to bars, even the ones that still allow smoking, and although it smells like shit, I have absolutely no desire to smoke. Maybe the guy hypnotizes you somehow while you read the book, I'm not sure. Suffice it to say, it works and it works well. A happy non-smoker. The number of shit habits that I dropped as easily as flipping a switch. But these damn cigarettes. Long-term benzodiazepines. Maybe deep alcohol use as well.
Anything GABA related is hell. Benzos, if you want to quit, often take in months, maybe even a year just to get off slowly, and then you're not guaranteed to feel normal, good for an extended period of time after that. It's hell on earth, and even heroin addicts will often say they'd rather kick heroin many times over than go through that.
I remember coming off benzos and had to go to the ER several times because I could feel my brain like short-circuiting. And this was after 2 weeks of literally wanting to die every waking second of single every day. Fucking hell.
The physical withdrawals from opiates are horrible, but the intense mental withdrawals from benzos are on another level.
I agree, benzo withdrawals have a psychological aspect to them that opiates don't. I very foolishly tried quitting Klonopin cold turkey a couple years ago.
The first 4 or 5 days weren't too bad. But by the time I reached day 10, my mind was in a very weird and terrifying place.
It's a level of hell that is difficult to put into words.
For me, benzos are extremely effective for panic attacks, so I always have a Xanax on me these days, and need them only a handful of times a year at most. Went 11 months without any recently, and when used that way there are nearly no downsides, but if you use them regularly, i.e. daily, and become dependent, it's one of the worst experiences I can imagine.
I use them so infrequently now. The ones I have for emergencies are nearly 2 years expired. I should probably turn them into the pharmacy and get a new small script. I'd hate to have an attack, and what I have has so little efficacy left.
The healthy fear from the past has kept me from abusing them ever again.
It's been 13 years since my withdrawal experience. I'll never forget that. I even went through some trauma a couple years ago and needed more than I'd like, and was paralyzed from taking more than what was absolutely necessary, even when doctors said it was okay. Benzodiazepines are the worst. 25 months is how long it took for me to be able to function.
That included 7 months to taper off.
I don't think it qualifies as the hardest to quit. Stopping was easy. Struggling waiting for my brain to heal was unbearable. I tapered for 5 months and stopped in October 2022. I still feel the effects of the benzo withdrawal. It takes some time. Be patient and proud that the taper is over. I got off these about 10 years ago after I had a doctor who prescribed me a ridiculously high dose. I didn't feel totally back to normal for 6 months, and even then I realized that all the social skills I had learned were learned when I was on benzos, so they were basically skills for another person. So I had to relearn social skills for the person I actually was. The thing that's really scary is that coming off of them makes you feel like you are literally going insane. I was not living in reality during that time, and that's a scary thing. Having said that, I saw people that were on these things for like 15 years or whatever, and they were really fried.
Their memory was shot.
My memory is already worse than it was, but at least I got off them when I did.
Jesus, I took 14.5 months to get off benzos and I had to relearn how to drive a car.
I was busted back down to kindergarten in all aspects of my life. It sucked. Glad you got off them too and got through the hell afterwards. Hooray.
What does addicted even mean in this context? Taking them every day? Having a physical dependence.
Generally happens when taken daily for long periods of time.
If someone can't stop taking them without going into withdrawals, then they are addicted. I can totally relate to this. Benzo withdrawal is so hard to explain to someone who hasn't gone through it.
It's pure hell, and yes,
you do feel like you're going insane. A year-long heavy benzo habit will make DTs, delirium tremens, from a lifelong alcoholic look like nothing.
The brain zaps were the worst.
Agreed. It's nearly impossible to describe to someone because the mental component is so big.
It is a very unique and dreadful experience. I forgot about the memory issues after prolonged use.
Scary to so often being mid-conversation or thought and just lose it.
Let alone what you did 5 seconds ago. Plus you could literally have a seizure and die if you stop taking Xanax cold turkey. I've kicked both, benzos and heroin. Although the heroin was harder to get off, the benzo withdrawal gave me horrific seizures.
Yeah, deep alcohol use almost killed me.
And fuck me, my drug of choice is available at every corner store, totally legal.
The shakes, the sweats, the hallucinations, the myoclonic jerks. I was so close to a seizure doctors were shocked I hadn't had one with my BAC when I went to the ER.
I was only 28. Luckily, 6 years sober. There's a place in this world for benzodiazepines, but it's not long-term regular use. I think it's so important to form correct awareness around benzodiazepine use because I had read so much about this that when my psychiatrist prescribed clonazepam to me for extreme panic disorder (PD) episodes, I was going into further panic about taking it, which wasn't helpful either. Benzodiazepines should never be used long-term every day. My psych said 2 weeks is safe, up to 4 can be considered under VA. Close supervision. Ad hoc for PD no problem.
In my case, ad hoc is 1 to 3 times per week, never exceeding 1 mg in a 24-hour window, never more than 4 days in a row. Realistically, on average I won't take more than 0.5 mg split into 2 doses 1x per week.
Never feel any recreational, fun effect from them. In fact, I know they're no longer needed when I forget to take them. That's the sign my episode is over. Benzodiazepines are the only thing that controls my panic episodes from CPTSD. It was a strew. GGLE when my doctor had to beg me to trust him that it's okay. And if I hadn't trusted him, I'd now be on antidepressants 24/7 and not able to track my other therapy progress. I was so desperate to avoid benzodiazepines I trialed antidepressants even though my gut told me not to, and I spent a week in what I can only describe as panic within. Chemical lobotomy above. There is a safe way to take benzodiazepines. People blindly listen to doctors who have them on benzos day in and day out for 10
years and then have a horrific time, and then others end up being so terrified to get helpful treatment.
As I did. Please stop demonizing benzodiazepines and start talking about what responsible versus irresponsible prescribing looks like. With all my patience and kindness, a person who was saved by benzodiazepines when a panic episode triggered suicidal thoughts for the first time ever in my life just a week ago. And yes, I recognize this is a thread about addictions that are hard to kick, so why? Our comment is valid, but I just feel very strongly about this grimace. I wanted to die when weaning off prescribed alprazolam. This is the answer. My best friend went through bad addictions to opioids and benzos, pseudo-benzos, like Ambien, in his life, and he said the opioids were much more physically painful with more harsh cravings, but because it felt so much like having a really, really bad flu, at least there's something of a familiarity to the sensation. And after a month or so, he felt pretty well fine. Benzo with D, he said, was still far worse,
totally disconcerting in a way that's not relatable to any sort of
normal, human state like a flu. And it took him 6 months to feel right. And that addiction wasn't even as long as his daily opioid habit was, like 1/2 as long. I was prescribed 2 mg of clonazepam in the AM and 2 mg at bedtime plus 10 mg Ambien. I have been off of them for 5 years now. It felt like my skeleton was trying to climb out of my body for months after I quit. It was so awful. My doctor was from another country, so she didn't realize it was a very abnormal dose for a 115 lb woman. The doctors couldn't believe I had been on that dose for years. I started sleepwalking on Ambien and had a bad accident. I'm so glad I didn't hurt anyone else. I barely remember those years. It's so embarrassing. I was just doing what my doctor told me to do. It never occurred to me that a doctor could make such a huge mistake. It didn't even help my anxiety and insomnia. I have no anxiety and no insomnia at 5 years clean. The benzodiazepines had made mine worse over time while I was on them. Long story short, watched a roommate whom I used to consider a friend wreck his life after getting addicted to benzos, and it ended with him killing our cat by accident. He went to one of the best schools in the country and had a lot of potential at one point. He felt really guilty about the cat, but it wasn't a wake-up call. I didn't resign the lease and I have no idea what happened to him, but I hope he recovered. I was on benzos for about 2 by 10 days to help with sleep. I will never ever do those again. 7 years later I am still longing for that feeling at least once a week. Probably the objectively correct answer, as I think it's the single most dangerous withdrawal that there is. I was a heavy smoker for 15 years. Quit cold turkey. Never was addicted to porn. I kicked a cocaine habit. Being a high-functioning alcoholic is probably something I'll never be able to beat. Trying to quit drinking hurts me physically and mentally so badly, and it doesn't really affect my life right now, so I justify not putting myself through it. I know I am shortening my life by not quitting, but I still just can't do it. Quitting alcohol can be done. In my experience, it takes time, patience, multiple relapses, and a mindset reset. It has taken me about 3 years to develop a distaste for alcohol, but I was a functional alkie for about 20 years. Go for it. You won't regret it. Yeah, a big thing you learn in recovery is that relapse is part of recovery. Too many people let a relapse define their recovery journey. Relapses are absolutely part of the process. I relapsed frequently early on and was more and more drawn to sobriety as it was an escape from the horrors of withdrawals and anxiety. As I got to know the contentedness and comfort sobriety brings, my relapses had become shorter in duration and further apart. I'm now at a state where I actually fear alcohol because of the day after ravages it always brings. No thanks. But you need the relapses to get you there because they reinforce the benefits of sobriety. My last relapse was so horrid that any temptations I've had since then have been relatively easy to fend off. I'm wary of complacency, though. Document how horrible you felt. Write it down so you can reference it and remind yourself next time you're tempted. My last relapse opened my eyes to a lot of shit. I didn't even like the drinking. I hated it. I hated being drunk. Today I'm nearly 6 months sober and it's so much better. I checked into a rehab, and one of the things that sucks most about people relapsing is sometimes they can't come back. Just a week ago a dude OD'd on blues in the bathroom. Paramedics brought him back, but he refused to go to the hospital even after being told he had enough fentanyl in his system to OD again once the narca wore off. He's still alive, but he's out there getting high and it sucks, you know? I had to have a pretty bad relapse to get to where I am today, but I don't think alcohol will kill me as quick as some of the other shit out there. Lost someone I knew to suicide, most likely because or also because of his alcoholism. I wish I could show him what you wrote here. My mom was an alcoholic for almost 18 years of my life. She will be 3 years sober this April. I am so proud of her, and I'm the only person in our immediate family, dad,
2 brothers, who supported and believed she could do it.
If anyone really wants to quit, I know they can do it. Because my mother did. I think alcohol really is the hardest to quit because it becomes a literal part of your body. People die from quitting alcohol cold turkey.
My alcoholic father had to be put on an alcohol drip during surgery just so his body wouldn't go into withdrawals and kill him because a couple hours without it would.
Weirdly, he's never smoked but did work in construction with asbestos, so he needed surgery for lung cancer. I grew up thinking he was Superman. The amount of times that man flipped his car. ND was found in a pile of blood on the road somewhere. I have no idea how he isn't dead yet. Also, alcohol is heavily advertised and every weekend people are out drinking. Society, it is a heavily accepted drug that also makes it hard. You also notice how ubiquitous it is in TV shows and movies. When I was withdrawing was when Mad Men was at its height and geez, whiskey in their hands constantly.
It's always so weird how we say, drugs and alcohol, as it's like saying, food and hamburgers.
Honestly surprised I had to scroll this far to see this point.
My first thought when I saw this thread was alcohol, mainly because it's so ingrained in how people socialize and relax. People are often seen as weird for being sober, and it's so common to get pressured by other people to drink because they don't realize what it's like to have a problem with it. It's one of the few drugs where sober people can sometimes be shamed or ostracized for their sobriety, or not invited to things.
I've
been back on the wagon for a week or so now, and even in this short time I had a friend say they'd just be down to hang another time since they didn't want to be the only one drinking if we went out. It's a tough addiction to kick when it's everywhere and you're the odd man out for not doing it.
And it's so socially acceptable, encouraged. Never heard, alcohol becomes a part of your body, before, but this is so true. I've been dependent for almost 3 decades with lots of periods of sobriety, but alcohol has changed my system. I simply can't do it in a healthy way. Impossible for my system. Less than 3. There are so many programs out there if you ever are interested. Or at least be sure to have someone around to monitor you so they can call an ambulance if things go south during the detox. I hope the very best for you. It's so hard to beat. Currently 7 months from my last drink. Aw, you are so amazing. Way to go, man. Thank you. Love the support. Life is so much better off the sauce. People hugging, purple heart, folded hands, medium light skin tone. How difficult was putting down your coke habit?
Asking respectfully here.
My brother is currently addicted. I think he's in counseling for it, but I just think he really cannot quit. It's very sad. For me, it wasn't that hard. When I got to the point I started considering doing bad shit to afford it, I got scared. I did have to lose some friends though. Not that they were bad, but I couldn't be around it anymore. I had to burn my bridges and cut people out of my life for any trendy powder. Slept a lot afterwards and then was okay-ish. Didn't feel joy for a few months after. But didn't go through nearly the pain as when I quit pills. For me, it came down to my dealer just making me feel so embarrassed and ashamed the one night I showed up at his house after he said he couldn't come to me. He came outside with a gun thinking he was getting set up, and when he saw it was me, he basically scolded me like a disappointed dad and explained how I could have died by anyone in that neighborhood for being there. That was a long, silent, reflecting ride home. Never touched it again. Just do what I did and wait until your liver fails and then quit. I was almost there. Had edema in my feet, went to urgent care, had a 160 pulse, went to the liver was swollen and near the edge of bad, stayed in the hospital for 48 hours, sober 2 years in May. Near the end I was drinking 20 to 25 beers a day. Never thought I could, but if I can, anyone can. And shout out to Stop Drinking, knowing you aren't alone in the fight is huge. And they just know, you know? Great, especially for the first year. Wow, 25 beers a day. I can't imagine, and I drink regularly. I'm 100% an alcoholic and am working really hard to stay sober. 20 to 30 drinks in a day is very common for me, but I could never do it with beer. It was all hard liquor for me.
That's so much liquid.
No kidding. I'd spend the whole day looking for the next bathroom. There was a time in my earlier years of drinking that I was just drinking beer. I put on so much weight that I switched to hard liquor.
To be fair, that switch is where my life went way downhill, but I did lose a lot of weight.
I'd try to limit myself by only buying 6 or 7 of those little airplane shooters. But I'd drink them in 20 minutes and head right back to the liquor store. I drink too much. I used to be at approximately 40 drinks a week, and now I'm at 15 to 20. I switched from beer to liquor for about 2 months a year ago, and shit started getting weird quick. All the fun got sucked out of it almost instantly, and it felt like my brain was frying. Switched back to beer and started working on bringing my volume down.
Been consistently having about 15 per week for the past couple months, which feels much better, but I'd still like to get down to 5 or so.
Keep at it. I have absolutely broken the on and off switch with alcohol. I have to be 100% sober because moderation was an absolute beast of a burden. 99% is a bitch. 100% is easy. Really should say easier, but that doesn't have the zing. There was a time in my life I drunk to excess every night, and it was becoming a problem.
I said to myself, I cannot deal with therapy and the whole stuff.
So only drink 1 day a week.
If you cannot do that, you have a fucking problem. For some reason I can cope with this. The majority of alcoholics end up on vodka.
I feel like my stomach would give up before my liver. That's so much drink and gas. At my worst, I was drinking about 25 shots every day. You build up such a high tolerance, after a while you need that much just to feel normal. 20 to 25 a day. That's so much liquid.
The sheer volume is grossly impressive. You end up urinating most of your electrolytes out.
It's what plants crave. Good stuff. Keep it going.
IWNDWYT. I can go through grams of coke and not want any for weeks after I am done. Drinking is much harder to kick.
But you're still going to want it after a couple weeks, right?
That's the thing with coke.
You think you're not addicted, BC? Hey. It's been 2 weeks. I can do some. And that's the addiction. Yes. I'm 100% with you. I've quit nicotine. It's not thought hard. Out of sight, out of mind. Booze? Never out of mind. I want to drink every day around 5 p.m. I'm annoyingly also just too high functioning to care right now. I want to quit, but drinking is so easy. And it isn't yet negatively affecting my health, but I know one day it will if I don't stop.
Nicotine easy?
I'm not doubting for you, as everyone is different, but damn, out of sight absolutely isn't out of mind for me, lol, and this is coming from someone who has quit benzos, amphetamines, drinking, and a few other less addictive things. But I chew the nicotine pouches. You can have them anywhere, no need to spit or take smoke breaks. It's just so hard because, well, I don't know why it's like you just feel like you need it. I'm with you. Nicotine was by far the hardest for me. It took me years of trying to quit. I quit opiates and drinking after doing both daily for years. I write this smoking my jewel. Congratulations on quitting smoking and kicking your cocaine habit. You have proven that you can indeed beat an addiction. You can quit drinking as well. Personally, I believe alcohol addiction and food addiction are two of the most difficult to quit, because we see food and alcohol just about everywhere. The liver is the only organ that can regenerate, heal itself, and for that very reason I do believe you should try to quit alcohol as well. I understand that it will not be easy to do, and you might have to do something like an in-treatment detox, since you mentioned the fact that you get sick when trying to quit on your own. I feel like I was meant to see this post, as well as your comment today. I'm new to Reddit, and haven't commented much at all. To get to the point of why I am commenting to you, my great-grandfather was a surgeon, quite advanced in his field, and years ahead of his time. As such, he was consulted to treat the actor Errol Flynn. Feel free to Google. He was a.h. UGE actor back in the day. Also, he happened to be a huge fan of the actor.
Upon meeting him, he told him that he was going to drink himself to any early death, but it wasn't too late, he could turn things around, but he would have to quit alcohol, partying, and his overindulgence in all things, to help heal his liver. My great-grandfather wanted to operate on him, and maybe even take out half of his diseased liver. Way ahead of his time as far as surgeons go, as this was the 1950s. Errol F.
Lynn obviously did not do what was advised. He did not opt to quit partying, nor did he have the surgery.
Subsequently he died at age 50. I feel like I typed a novel, to a stranger no less. But, I do hope that you read my comment, and if you've been waiting on a sign to quit, perhaps this is it. I felt pulled to comment and promise it comes from a good place. Best of luck to you, in your life, and health, which path you choose to take. I've heard a Harvard psychiatrist who specializes in addictions say the addiction that's hardest to treat is the one where the patient says that it makes them feel like a normal person.
Like it makes them feel like everyone else.
Because that's a really hard thing to give up, feeling normal.
Didn't think this would blow up like this. Check out Dr. K on YouTube and Twitch.
KATUSM didn't know you were so active on Reddit. My bad sir, I would have tagged you right away.
Healthy Gamer GG. This is what benzodiazepines were for me. I never felt more like myself than when I was on them. Trying to come off of them, I nearly killed myself. I have never really done drugs.
Just before having a vasectomy, I got a dose of benzodiazepine straight into my veins. It made me feel so good. Then when it wore off, it gave me a sense of awe of people who get addicted to them and manage to come off. I developed a panic disorder in my 30s after a traumatic attack. Your post put it into perfect perspective. Off medication, I feel like I'm about to go into surgery 24/7. Benzos made that feeling go away. My primary physician prescribed me all my meds because the wait for a psychiatrist in my rural area of the US was over a year and a half. I realized I had become physically dependent a couple months ago when I ran out of my Xanax for the first time and felt like I had the worst flu ever. Got myself into the hospital and basically forced myself into the mental health care system after 4 years of waiting on a wait list when they heard my story. The way it happened was surreal. No one believed I didn't have any other addictions or previous mental health issues. I couldn't believe I was physically dependent on a scheduled drug either. I got drug tested like 5 times in 2 days. I can't smoke weed, I barely drink, there was nothing to find. And when everything came back negative, they Ally believed me. I guess it's rare for people to become dependent, realize it, and nope out ASAP, but that's what I did. I don't want to go down that road. I'm sitting here with my taper of Xanax right next to me without craving it because I finally had people take the time to find the correct mixture of other medications, and I just simply don't need the Xanax most of the time these days. But it was fucking rough detoxing. It's super eye-opening to see that I can have a life that doesn't involve being a slave to benzos, because I genuinely hated being on them. I just hated panicking more. The fucked up part is that it only took seeing a real psychiatrist. She added an antihistamine and upping my SSRI a little bit. That's all I needed, but our system is so messed up that the flowchart my doctor was following didn't lead him to doing those things. He threw random old-school sleeping pills at me to try for years with 150 Xanax pills a month as backup. Same thing happened to me. I was prescribed Klonopin for over a decade. I never abused it because my mom is a pill addict, Oxy, and I never wanted to turn out like her. I took 2 milligrams of Klonopin a day for 12 years for panic disorder. When I had to stop taking them, I was shook at how physically dependent my body had become. Took me about 6 months to taper down from 2 milligrams to nothing, and those were the worst 6 months of my life. I felt like I was in hell. Took me another 6 months to finally feel normal again. Benzos should be outlawed. They'll fuck your life up even if you take them as prescribed. Man, I have almost the same story as you. Daily 2 milligrams Klonopin for 8 years, though in the last couple years, I took them when needed.
Probably saved my life, as I was having daily panic attacks that were massive, not to mention expensive visits. I quit cold turkey and luckily never formed any dependence or side effects, but in hindsight, it was extremely dumb of me, as I know now you can die from benzo withdrawal. Benzos have their place emo, but they're not meant to be taken long term.
Dang, I'm glad you didn't die from withdrawal.
And that's awesome that you never developed physical dependency. I'll concede benzos do have their place, and I think DRS only prescribe them short term nowadays. But I wish I could go back in time to the doctor who originally prescribed them to me and punch him in his face, lol, tears of joy. Seriously though, glad you're well. How's your panic disorder these days? I am diagnosed with panic disorder, GAD, borderline personality disorder, PTSD, major depressive disorder, and some agoraphobia. I took benzos for a long time and loved them until one day, my doctor decided that they were addictive due to the drug crisis in America and took me off of them. I had seizures, and everything I felt before was intensified by 1000 after I was taken off. I managed to stop taking them and any other meds I was on, but I hate how I feel every day. Now, I take another Drew.
Gee, that helps me feel normal.
Although, it helps not like my benzos did. It's hard to feel safe in life when your brain is holding you hostage every day. Some people just don't understand how that feels, so they accuse me of just being an addict. Being an addict is not my problem. My problem is I am not an addict, I just want to be free from my self-imposed prison sentence. The same story for me too. When I was first prescribed benzos, it was an amazing feeling. I could go to crowded places and not feel like I was going to have a panic attack. I thought this is what normal people feel like all the time. Like you, it was absolutely horrendous to get off of them. It took almost a year of gradually weaning myself off of them. Going to the first outings without being under the influence of my beloved Klonopin was miserable. Being around people and talking to them up close and personal. Driving myself to get there and then actually getting out of the car was terrible. It's been 4 years and I've gotten used to life this way. I find it very boring though. This is exactly why I started doing drugs. Painkillers and meth removed my anxiety and let me feel just normal and able to function around other people. Then one day I got anxiety while high on meth and it never went away while high. And because you're on meth, the anxiety gets multiplied by 100. I had to be very careful about what I did around other people because I would be shaking so bad that it would give me away. Literally couldn't hold a pen and write my name. 2 years sober in June. Edit. Thank you everyone. I did not expect this. I really appreciate it. Grats. H made me feel like a normal functioning person. When I had it. 5 years last November. Yeah, I think of all the drugs, opioids are quickest to build tolerance to the point where they don't get you high anymore, they just permit you to function. I've known lots of addicts. Uncle died of an H overdose, and am very conscious of the biochemistry of addiction. I was taking Oxy and after 3 days I noticed that I felt like I had a mild flu, but maybe I'd feel better if I took some Oxy, and I immediately knew that was the early fingers of withdrawal and addiction. Stopped taking them except for breakthrough pain. I had the same experience with prescribed opioids. They gave me enough for a week after my surgery and I found myself thinking about lying to my doctors to try and get more. That shit's pure evil and it'll twist you around its finger so damn fast. I was in the hospital November to January end of last year, on a daily drip of Dilaudid and oral Oxy for breakthrough pain. Got released end of Jan, went home with 120 Dilaudid and 90 Oxy 15s, IR. Came off both of them 2 weeks ago and been coasting on Suboxone. Thank God for that shit. Grats on 2 years. Did you just abbreviate a word that has already been abbreviated? There's no con in giving up meth. Well played. Have my imaginary award. Grr on figuring that out. Have you never heard someone being congratulated by lots of people? Grats is incredibly common. Just like meth is the abbreviation of methamphetamine, which is the abbreviation of N-methylamphetamine,
which is the abbreviation of N-methyl alpha-methylphenethylamine, which is the abbreviation of N-methyl alpha-methylphenylethylamine.
I had a similar response when I first started doing opiates. Prescribed by a drive. It was like an epiphany. Oh, this is how normal people feel and function. No pain, no anxiety. I felt on top of the world and literally could not see myself without them. My life was perfect. Or so it seemed, for a time. Things got bad. Lost everything, and I have a long sob story like anyone else affected by addiction.
But now I have a beautiful wife and 2 amazing children that I simply cannot live without.
Even with that, I still miss the way the pills made me feel.
It's a feeling that just cannot be replicated.
Clean for 5+ years. And stopped drinking recently. 119 days sober today.
But to be frank, I don't plan on not drinking forever.
I miss it.
This is just conjecture by a random Redditor, but if meth is helping you feel normal, could you possibly have some form of ADHD?
I think maybe seeing a doctor and getting prescribed legal medication might be a help on top of sobriety. I'm on anxiety meds that help me not feel so IDK awful. Any drug you become addicted to, eventually you stop getting high from it. You take it to simply feel normal.
This the worst part of addiction, except withdrawal perhaps. Because you realize you're so dependent on something to feel normal every day. It stops being fun and turns into almost a chore, and probably an expensive one. This is what led to me going back to chewing tobacco time and time again. Didn't get diagnosed until I was 6 months sober and fucking miserable, but the misery and thought patterns were very similar to the shit I thought I got over when I left high school. Turns out being a workaholic in a career suited to me and being an alcoholic and either drunk or hungover all the time was the best coping mechanisms I ever found for my ADHD. Lol. Got sober, left the kitchen. My whole life got flipped upside down.
WN.
Been 3.5 years now, and I finally feel like I'm starting to get my life figured out a little. This long rant essentially boils down to my anecdotal evidence being an example of what you're talking to you.
It's never bad advice to chat with a doctor, therapist about how you're feeling. I work in mental health and I came here to say this. I see people come in frequently for a ADHD evaluation who have a history of meth use because it helps them concentrate and doesn't give them the typical high. Matthew Perry is cited saying alcohol made him feel like a normal person for once.
Same for me.
It just fixes whatever is wrong in my brain.
I can think clearly.
I feel confident. I can talk to people without feeling anxious.
Addiction has a lot of different meanings and I personally don't subscribe to it.
I never drink at inappropriate times. I don't crave alcohol. But I love drinking when I do it. I never even really get drunk. It works so well for my brain that I can be blackout drunk and still functioning like a normal person. It's only until I stop moving that I begin to realize how much I drank. I also don't get hungover unless I drink really specific stuff, which I don't. It's like it was meant for me, IDK.
Yeah, that's why I like the term, self-medicating. At that point it isn't really about getting drunk, but about achieving a regular equilibrium. It's tough to only feel that through a substance.
I had a similar thing with weed when I was younger. It did eventually cause me issues, which is why I can't smoke now. But for a few years it was like a match made in heaven. I had a heroin addiction and got clean. An opioid pill addiction and got clean. I quit smoking.
Stopping alcohol was the worst.
I had a buddy that quit heroin about the same time as I did but wasn't a drinker.
I explained to him, imagine if they sold heroin at every convenience store, had commercials for heroin on TV. Most of your friends, family, and loved ones did heroin around you, and heroin was socially acceptable.
He literally turned pale and said, Jesus Christ. Also, I found alcohol withdrawals worse than opioid withdrawals. I'm neurodivergent and this is quite a common occurrence with NDs. I was like you for years until I was drinking all the time. 6 years sober and no friends now. I am very confident this is my issue. I don't have the money for any sort of diagnosis or medication, but I'm open to it when the timing is right.
My younger brother has the worst ADHD I've seen out of any others I know who have it.
Just a matter of right timing for me.
Who said that?
I'd love to learn more.
Dr. Alec Kanogia, also known as Dr. K, he used to have his own practice but now makes YouTube videos and streams trying to help people online with mental health.
Pissed.
KATUSM is Dr. K Law. LMAO, that's funny.
R. Beetlejuicing. Love me some Drive. K. He's the GOAT. Absolute Chad behavior from Dr. K.
It is exactly how I feel. Alcohol was the one connection I felt with most people. I am a literal Chad, so maybe I was part of the study.
Hello fellow Chad Mac. I literally want to learn more just because this has me dying of laughter. Thanks for the giggle. I'm an addict, but I'm not the kind that needs to take every last bit or drink every last ounce. I don't even like to be fucked up, but I need a little alteration constantly. Could be weed, wine, kratom, kava, nicotine, and/or caffeine. I'm just addicted to not feeling normal. I've done a lot of inner work, examinations of my trauma, meditation, even exercising a few days a week. I feel so uncomfortable in my skin without just a little nip, toke, pill, or puff. I'm starting to think it could be untreated ADHD. Edit. This is why I love Reddit. The overwhelming majority of these comments are supportive and kind. I feel a fair amount of shame for my shortcomings, but it's so nice to read all these comments from folks just like me. We're all here because we're not all there. Thank you. I also don't understand how people are just out there raw dogging reality.
It's almost the opposite for me.
I can raw dog reality law.
But when I'm home or on my downtime, it's nice to have a little something to help unwind. That's exactly it though. Thrived in the chaos, but I couldn't be alone in my head at night when things calmed down.
Living the same dream, my friend.
Get through the day, no problem. But when the family goes to bed and the emails have been answered, it's impossible to shut the brain off until 2 a.m. Then start over again at 6. Have you found anything that helps that is also healthy?
It'll take a lot of trial and error, but I really like walking. Gives me a chance to think about my day before I lay down. In my experience, I had underlying depression and anxiety, so even after a year or so of stopping using alcohol or mind-numbing drugs, I was so overwhelmingly anxious that I was on the verge of hysterics every day and was constantly paranoid and fearful. I did have to go on antidepressants. I wouldn't and didn't use any benzos like diazepam etc.
Just SSRIs and SRNIs. It did help.
It took a while to realize that things had changed for me emotionally. I was used to getting some sort of effect
after taking something. This was more a gradual improvement and the mind racing got much better over time.
I would drink to shut my brain up, however in the end it stopped working, as these things do.
One thing I have learned over many years of recovering from the worst times in my life, I learned that if I am wound up and can't stop the mind racing, is that intensive exercise is not the answer. I needed to consciously learn to relax. I had to be taught how to do it, and I learned that the more I tried to control the mind racing, the worse it got. I had to learn to relax and put the mind racing in the back of my mind. We always think it's a normal thing. The problem with us seems to be we take notice of it and judge ourselves for what we are thinking. What I noticed with my friends in recovery who tried to walk or run it off is that the faster they went, the faster their thinking and minds went. So my suggestion and what worked for me was learning to smell the roses and go for a long gentle stroll. Make a point of looking around and focuses on the small things. The sun, the rain, the clouds, the looks on people's faces. Get grounded and try not to judge yourself or your thoughts. They are only thoughts. Oh boy. Relate too hard to this. Fight or flight, constant vigilance is a thing. https://www.health.harvard.edu/staying-healthy/understanding-the-stress-response.
Amen, brother, sister. I don't know how they do it.
Gotta tell you, before my son started taking atomoxidine non-amphetamine ADHD meds, I didn't realize I had ADHD, just thought it was as you describe.
I went on it and it changed everything for me. Worth getting diagnosed and treated.
Hard to make progress without doing something about the chemistry.
Holy crap, this is me too. I'm too scared to both admit it's ADHD as well as seek it out.
Maybe it's the elder millennial in me.
I'd feel embarrassed or something.
Crazy to think that at 40 I just now realized I can't finish a task without getting sidetracked. I know it yet can't stop. Really? It's like $350 to find out. They basically just ask a few questions, then try a little meds to see if you experience the appropriate change before they lock in the diagnosis and up the dose. Experiment to find what works best for you.
You could just self-test with somebody else's meds, but do a light dose.
Only you need to know what you're looking for, and you need to know that some of the meds don't work so well for one person while others do.
So it's not just like take a small dose of
Adderall and know for sure you have ADHD. You may need Ritalin.
Basically do your homework going in. I knew my So had it years before her diagnosis. She was so scared to get help.
Glad she did though.
Her world is a way different and better place since she started meds. Some bumps up front, some kinda world-breaking moments.
But that all settled pretty quick. By any chance do you mean atomoxetine? Because that's what I used. It hasn't worked fully for me, but my God, if I don't take it for a day I feel awful and keep thinking, is this really what it was like for so many years? You're probably experiencing the discontinuation syndrome that's common to SNRIs, not just what you felt like before.
Good afternoon. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm you.
You're me.
We're ADHD. Just a little to knock the roller coaster off its tracks.
Keep you in the moment and not off in another moment. You call that was way more interesting.
It's a shifting goal line. Today a Red Bull, tomorrow a coffee. What's gonna keep me in the moment today? I guess I've found my people. Welcome.
I've never successfully met my people.
We tend to be a fickle, lonesome bunch.